Rabbi Irwin Keller. We are about to enter the realm of magical thinking, which the largely Muggle world does not deem a smart place to dip one's toes. But here at Ner Shalom, we swim through those waters at least once a week, poking our Jewish inquisitive noses through clouds, wading into ephemeral mountains, and regularly consulting angels, then landing safely back on solid ground. And we can do this because our fearless leader is the luminous Rabbi Irwin Keller, who holds our hands firmly and gently, crooning inspiring melodies, and then stepping out first. And the sparkle of his footsteps makes it easy for us to follow. Even though we don't have the depth of his scholarship, we know that the paths he travels are on sacred, well-trodden ground held together by ancient Jewish roots. Rabbi Irwin Keller has been the spiritual leader of Congregation Ner Shalom since 2008. A former lawyer, activist, and drag performer, his sermons and essays can be explored on his blog, Itzik's Well, found at irwinkeller.com. Reb Irwin is one of those rare souls who, while delighting in the numinous, understands that the work to be done on earth requires mental discipline and heartbreaking, open-eyed, heavy lifting, which he did in his years of progressive legal study and work and continues to do through his advocacy toward a world of justice and mercy for all beings. Welcome and thank you, Reb Irwin. Time to lift the veil.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Leah. I don't think there's really anything I could do after. Anything's going to be a disappointment after that introduction. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, curious folks, seekers. Welcome from Vancouver and welcome from Bisbee, Arizona, and from Humboldt County and from Santa Cruz and from all of the places that you're coming to us tonight. I've never really exactly taught this, so we'll see how it goes, and we'll see what we can fit in. I'd like this to be an exploration for all of us because we only have so many minutes, so we're not going to be learning the sort of the nuts and bolts of Jewish magic. But I want to first say a little bit about what I was thinking with this. First of all, magical thinking. By magical thinking, I don't mean wish that our ancestors might have thought. Let me know if you can hear me okay, because I just got a message that my internet is unstable. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah,
can
we
you
can hear
repeat
you.
what you said?
Yeah, now I can even repeat it better. So the first thing I want to say is that magical thinking, for our purposes tonight, is not wishful thinking. It's about thinking in a different way, um, using magical thinking as a strategy for bringing about change. And that change could be personal, interpersonal, community, political, global, earth-based and earth-wide. Magical thinking that we're going to be talking about tonight is arguably scalable. The magic of our ancestors involved ritual with special components chosen for the magic, for the change that was sought. The ritual and the words that were chanted or written involved a lot of connectivity, connectedness to place and time, to the visible and invisible realms and beings, and to the interactiveness and intraactiveness of the world. So I'll tell you a little bit what I mean by this as we go. Traditional Jewish magic involves speaking divine names, and this is a specific area of magic I'm talking about, because we had all sorts of magical practices that have not come down to us or have just come down to us through individual transmission. But what I know about magic from sources like Sefer Yetzirah and Sefer HaBahir and Sefer Raziel HaMalach, this is a particular kind of line of Jewish magic. So what I mean by magic's a tricky word to use because magic is so often vilified. Magic is uh, a way of doing ritual or prayer or ecstatic experience that's outside of accepted norms. So it's kind of a charged word and therefore a little bit of an exciting and naughty and enticing word. But our magical texts never call themselves magical. They might use a term like uh, kshafim to mean sorcery or some kind of magic, but when they use that word, they're always talking about what someone else does that their practices are defending against. They never use those words to describe what they're doing. And that's because what they're doing is not, in some ways, supernatural. What they're doing is they already have this connection to the natural world that has a quality of the spiritual to it. And what they're doing with their magical incantations, their angelic adjurations, are in a way like what we do with prayer or what we do with setting intentions, but maybe notched up a few levels. But they're not doing something supernatural. They're doing something that is both super and natural. Um, so, what do I want to tell you? Yes, so Rabbi Gershon Winkler, in a book that Rabbi George mentioned earlier tonight in Magic of the Ordinary, talks about the words and acts that are called magical. They call forth what is concealed deep within the core of the ordinary. Magic is not supernatural, but at the deep structure level of natural. We're all already connected to animal and plant world and to all of physical creation through our shared source and to the unseen realms. So my question for tonight, as I tell you a little bit more about some of our traditional magical concerns and forms, is how we might adopt and adapt some of the ways our ancestors thought in our own efforts to make change in our lives or in the world. What principles of preparedness, awareness of time and place, awareness of chains of causality, invocation of needed qualities, and embodiment of power might help us. So I want us to start by taking a minute. We're going to take a minute, and I'd like to ask you to let arise for you some change that you'd like to bring about. And there's no should. It doesn't need to be world peace tonight. It can be, but it could be a deepening, a personal deepening, a learning that you're wanting, a relationship change. It could be political change. So take a minute and let's just be silent and see what desire arises for you. So if something has arisen for you and you're on camera, put your hand on your heart so I know. And if you feel like it, you can also share it in the chat. This does not have to be a public activity, but it can be. We might inspire each other. Or maybe what arose for you will inspire something in someone else. Whatever it is that came up for you, hold on to it, because as we look at some of the elements of traditional Jewish magic, we might ask, what does that have to say about this change that I want to make now? Ilan says, to learn, to continue to share in learning. So a desire to bring about more learning, to arrive at a place of greater learnedness. Thank you. So I'm going to put into the chat a little handout for you that you can pull up if you'd like. For Dorothy, it's connecting better with a friend without losing myself. And Janet Ray is interested in doing a gratitude ritual to the land that she lives on before she moves away. Great. So some of the elements, and Neshama, Ruben says, lifting my inner expectations and improving my physical constructions. And Neshama says, creating serenity in my physical space. Great. Thank you for sharing those. So a sort of a basic template of Jewish magic as it comes to us through these texts might involve these elements. One element is personal preparation before engaging in any magical ritual. Then the magical ritual itself involves a keen awareness of time and place. It involves some chanting of divine names. It involves an invocation or adjuration of angels. And I might also call that something else. We'll come back to it, but an awareness of causality, of subtleties of causality. And an articulation of the desired outcome. You know, if what I'm looking for is a change in this relationship with my friend, then whatever ritual I do around it, whatever magic I try to cook up around it, I want to be explicit about what it is, explicit and specific about what it is that I'm looking for. So the first element is personal preparation. Our ancestors were, Shomrei mitzvot. They were people that were doing mitzvot all the time and living these very immersed Jewish lives. Before doing a magical ritual, they might have spent a few days doing meditation or sitting quietly or doing immersions or fasting or cutting out certain kinds of foods or sexual abstinence. In other words, they did things so that when they arrived at the time of offering the words and the intentions, they were very focused. So coming back to what it is that you're looking for, the change that you're looking for, and you might even jot this down. A question might be, what is preparation that you would want to do before you undertake some kind of magical ritual or some kind of engagement some kind of engagement around creating this change, creating a different outcome? What is it that keeps your engagement from not just being the next item on your to-do list? So give a moment of thought. See what arises for you as a conducive way of preparing yourself. If you'd like to share it in the chat, go ahead. Might give us ideas. And I recognize that I'm asking you how to prepare for it without our having talked yet about what it is. So you might need to come back to this question. Calling in ancestors and guides, creating a special space, physical space, and an opening for change. Art or journaling, getting creative juice flowing so that you're already in a flow, lighting a candle to create a separation into a different kind of consciousness, quieting the mind and body. And I suspect a lot of us in this room have done different contemplative practices, and so those are available to us. They are at our fingertips more than some of the things that our ancestors did. So, gosh, I kind of want to skip timing for the moment and then come back to it, because I want to talk about the angelic adjurations, because that's at the core of our ancestors' magic. And the word adjuration is this that I put in the chat. To adjure means in Hebrew lahashbia, that is to cause someone else to commit to something, to cause someone else to promise something. I adjure you, O angels, to do blah, blah, blah. So in a magical incantation, in a magical spell, a Jewish medieval magical spell, say, the person doing the magic, after having prepared, will pronounce some divine names, or a divine name, or some permutation of a divine name. It's a way to start sourcing divine power by connecting to the divine in that way. It's not exactly forcing God's hand, because God's hand can't be forced, but it's entering into a deeper conversation. God, I know your name, so we can talk very closely now. And in a way, getting permission to then bring the angelic forces to bear. So then the next piece is calling in angels. So a little bit about the sort of cosmology behind this. To the minds of the folks doing this kind of magic, angels represented really every facet of the cosmos, every facet of natural forces and spiritual forces in operation in the world. They understood that the angels are not exactly independent personalities. The angels are a way of expressing something about the particulars, the subtleties of divine power. And you can see that often in the names of angels. A lot of the angelic names are permutations of God's name, or God's name interpolated with another word, meaningful word, or a word from Torah that's been anagrammized, permuted. There, and then there are all of the names that you will recognize that end with the particle El meaning God. Gavriel, Raphael, Michael, Tzadkiel, Raziel. What are all of those names? The something of God. Gavriel, the power of God. Tzadkiel, the righteousness of God. Raziel, the secrets of God. In the incantations that we receive, that we see written down, hundreds and hundreds of these names laid out. When you want to do this and you want the plant to grow, the crop, the new seeds to grow, then on this particular day, at this particular time, you invoke these angels, and it just gives lists and lists of angels. So one of the ways to look at this is an awareness of all of the different elements that need to be in place for some kind of change to happen. That between me and the outcome that I'm hoping to achieve, there are so many elements. There's so many things that have to shift in some way. And one thing causes the next thing to shift. There's this cascade of causality. And our ancestors, by naming angels after the different kinds of elements that they needed to put into play, our ancestors were naming their awareness. They were bringing into their awareness all of the elements. So for instance, if I have a family situation that's tense, and the magic I want to do is about resolution, then maybe a bunch of different things have to happen. I can't just say, I want resolution. I want to invoke calm. I want to invoke a feeling of safety so that people can open their minds and hearts in a new way. I want to invoke love. I want to invite in communication. I want to name the possibility of trust. So as I name those things, if I were one of our ancestors doing magic names that end with El, so Gabriel, the power of God, I might instead come up with, I don't know, Chovav El, the love of God, or I might come up with Imun El, the trust of God. Gershon Winkler, in his book, finds a better way to express it than the this and the that of God, which sounds kind of, I think, kind of odd to our ears. He would say, what are the examples he gives? Like Tzadkiel, which you would translate literally as the righteousness of God. He calls it righteousness power. And there's another angel name he noticed, Namriel, which would mean like the tiger or the panther of God. He calls it panther power. So the question is, what are the powers? What are the elements? What are the intentions that you need to invoke in order to get from here to there? So that you're not just thinking of an outcome, but you're noticing all of the spiritual elements that might need to shift a little bit along the way. So take a moment now and think about the goal that you had jotted down and name a few elements that you would want to invite in or to shift. And just jot them down. And be generous, because the more things that you invite in, the more possibility there is. And maybe you can put some of these in the chat. We don't need to know what your outcome is, but what are some of the things you want to invite or invoke? Spaciousness, shutting off media, stronger connection with who I am. I'd like to invite forgiveness, confidence, willingness, purpose, perceptiveness. Beautiful. And I'd like to invite the first couple of folks to break it down even to sort of one word or two word things, so that we're really looking at what are the basic things. So what do I need to get a stronger connection with who I am? Maybe it's time, space, introspection, quiet. Maybe those are the things I need to, there are things more basic. Release of expectations, slowness, reflection, openness, letting go of resistance. What might be a way to break that down? Breath, ease, unclenching. Like, what are the one word things? And then let those be the angels that you're invoking. unclenching power, playfulness power, curiosity power, or put them in Hebrew, uh, I don't know, Mischak El, Sakran El, time, listening. And Dorothy, accept new ideas, reflection, letting reconnects go, curiosity. Yeah. See if we can break these down to a bunch of atoms, attention. Yeah. Lightness and playfulness, will, trust, breath, so that you can start seeing between here and the thing that you want to change. What are the elements that you want to put in motion? Get all of these things going at once. Stir up this pot. Memory. Reuben is giving us an angel name, Uriel, light. Maybe I just need light shed on a situation that I can't quite see my way out of. Maybe the angel Uriel is that. Our ancestors trying to find their way out of something they couldn't quite see. And so they created Uriel representing the light that needs to be cast. Commitment, appreciation for what is. Beautiful, beautiful. So in your own time, or on your own time, or, during the rest of the session, if you'd like, take some of these things that you've come up with and turn them into angels. Just personify them enough so that you can invite them. Angel of memory. You don't have to come up with a name in Hebrew or even in English. Angel of memory, I invite you. Angel of breath, I invite you. Angel of trust, I invite you. There's something about this, I think, that not only gives us a subtlety of awareness of the complexity of our situations and our shorthand thinking of, I want peace now, doesn't get us there because there isn't enough subtlety to it. This kind of thinking causes you to back up and think, what are the spiritual and emotional truths that need to be reflected in a solution that's going to bring about the change I'm looking at? And personifying them just a little bit, I think, makes the possibility of change more animate. It's a little bit less of heavy lift from you and rather engagement of the universe, engagement of creation around you, so that you are stirring up change rather than doing all the lifting yourself. What do you mean about the law of attraction, Janet? Unmute and tell us what you mean.
Oh, well, I guess at first I wrote down all these the negative things. I wrote fear, perfection, speed, and then I realized, oh yeah, I need to ask for the positive, ask for what I want. And so then it just made me think, oh, are we asking for the angels that we need? And then it made me think of the law of attraction.
I think you could do, I think you could also do a magical ritual where you're also telling certain elements to stay back. I find invitation is attractive to me, and all of this is very powerful. And I don't know, the things that we might say, I want those things to stay back. We also don't know what uses they have for us that we're not aware of. So it's almost like I have this recipe. The spiritual batter that I live in is made of all of these different things, and I don't quite know if the dough will rise in the same way if I ask for less of this, but maybe more of this. I don't know. And I haven't given this enough thought yet. This is where I'm labbing this a little bit. There's something to me that feels safer about inviting in than in kicking out. But I don't know. Let's see. What did I give you in this handout? So one element, yeah, Rinat.
I have a question. I don't know if it's appropriate. One of the things that I always hesitant with like making requests like that or invitations like that is that I don't know really what is needed, because maybe something that I think is really bad for me right now is actually exactly what I need, you know? So, and maybe my fantasy of what I think I need is really not what I need right now.
Yeah, fair. That's a nice question. And my instinct on it is, first of all, yes, this is all powerful. When we're inviting things into our spiritual field, that's a powerful thing to do. But I also think breaking it down into the small elements makes it. So, for instance, I want to be married again. Like, I don't know if that would be good, but I want to invite love, and I want to invite companionship, angel of love, angel of companionship, angel of ease, angel of non-anxiety. And maybe that will result in the thing I'm thinking, but maybe it will be different medicine for me. And if I break it down to those things, it's hard to say that ease or companionship or love might not be good for me, even though it's easy to imagine that that next marriage might not be. So maybe that's my thought about it, is that the smaller the unit of desired change, the smaller, the more precise and limited in authority the particular angelic invocation, then I think you're running less of a risk of ending up with something that you didn't want, and more likely to end up with something good for you, whether it's what you were picturing or not. But I don't know. That's my thought. Targeted angel request. Yeah. And I think that there is something to be said for these incantations that our ancestors did. It wasn't one angel they were inviting. It was a whole troop of different angels. And so that allows a certain chemistry to arise. And so targeted in the sense of, be specific in the invocations, but a bunch of them, do a bunch of them. Is the Shechinat El in the chant we sing at bedtime, the angel of Shekhinah? Oh, that's so beautiful. So Shoshana is talking about our angel chant in the bedtime Shema. Mimini, Michael, on my right is Michael, on my left is Gabriel, in front of me is Uriel, behind me is Raphael. These are 4 archangels in our Jewish mythologies. And then it goes on and says, Va'al Roshi Shechinat El, above me is the Shekhinah of God. And that's that's super interesting, Shoshana. Is Shekhinah itself a kind of angel? Or is there something else that is Shechinat El as an angelic presence that's different from Shekhinah? I think there's a lot of tension in the tradition around our monotheism, that all is one, but then we keep animating and anthropomorphizing different elements of the divine. And we keep walking that line of being monotheistic and polytheistic. I mean, if you look at our angelologies, it really, and what we're doing right here, right now, by asking different angels to intervene, I mean, there's something very, very polytheistic about that. And then we retreat and say, but these are aspects, these are faces of. Are we creating these angels just by naming them? Or are we invoking angels that already exist? Ruben says, in Ladino we say la Shekhinah del Dios sobre la cabeza. Yeah. Sobre la cabeza, Shekhinah del Dios, cada día, cada noche. Yes. And I guess it is ambiguous. I've always read it as simply Shekhinah, but it's explicitly taking an angelic form. Look, Yisrael is an angel name. The God's struggle power, or something, or pouring out power, or conduit power, Israel. I want to talk about the next thing, which is sort of time, place, and manner. If you're thinking about offering up some kind of ritual, not the way they did it, but making these invitations, preparing yourself, preparing the space, making some kind of invitation to some of these kavanot, some of these intentions, some of these elements that you want to invite into your life around this thing you're thinking about. They also pay close attention to when you do it and where you do it. And I've given you some of that just so you get a sense of what they did. So if you roll to page 2, I gave you just a little bit of calendar that our Jewish magical systems take into consideration the signs of the zodiac, the time of year, which tkufa is governing, and tkufa would be, in modern Hebrew, it means a period of time, but in these texts, a tkufa means specifically a solstice or an equinox. And then if you scroll down to the next page, we already talked about angelic names. You see that the planets, the close heavenly bodies, sun and moon, and the known planets of the time, are each associated with an angel, usually a high level angel, and there are different systems. There are different systems for what angel goes with what. But knowing what heavenly body is governing at any particular moment is another key into what angels. Repost the handout. Can somebody scroll up and do that? I would appreciate it. And we do it unconsciously. This is part of the mythos that has concretized into our system. So if we think about our weekdays, it exists in English, but it might, Sunday is the day governed by the sun, and Monday is the day governed by the moon. Then we get a few Teutonic gods, Norse gods, but if we did who are equivalents, but we don't know that mythology as well. But if we go into a Romance language, what do we get on Tuesday? Martes. So what governs Martes is Mars. What governs Miércoles? Mercury. What governs Jueves? Jove or Jupiter. Viernes is Venus. And then we're back to English. Saturday is Saturn's day, right? So we are living in a secular world, in a mythology where there's a different planet that holds sway over each of these days. In Greek and Norse mythology, the god that planet is named after would be holding sway on that day. In our mythology, there's an angel associated with each of those bodies. But it's not just the day of the week. The hours of the day, every hour of the day has a different heavenly body that governs. And so if you scroll to page 4, did that get reposted? That the link? Thank you, Carolyn and Leah and Sally and Renat. I put in this. I created this chart for you. So One chart is planetary influences on the hours of the days of the week, and the other is of the nights of the week. So, and these hours are what are called temporary hours, or they were created at a time of temporary hours. So what does temporary hour mean? Is that we currently treat an hour as 60 minutes. An hour is 1/24th of a day. And that seems obvious and easy to us. But in a time before clocks, before a lot of popularized mathematics or clocks in the town square, you couldn't tell um, where, when it was wintertime and the days were short and the nights were long. How did you tell what an hour was? How could you tell what a 60-minute hour was when you didn't have something ticking? So if you think about how a sundial tells time, it divides the available light into those number of units, and say 12 units. So daytime, so here in these hours of the days of the week, an hour is 1/12 of that day's daylight. So if you only have 6 hours of daylight, it's the dead of winter, you only have 6 hours of daylight. That means one of these hours lasts 30 minutes. Does that make sense? And then the nighttime hours are going to last 90 minutes. So the nighttime jurisdictions of the heavenly bodies last longer in the winter, and then in the summer they're shorter. Anyway, so if you think about what are the valences of these heavenly bodies, if you look back on page 3, if I'm looking for healing, I might want to do my ritual at a time that is governed by Raphael, by the angel of healing. If I'm looking for strength for something, I might want to do my ritual at a time governed by Gabriel. If we start adopting this kind of magical thinking, we're not probably going to be creating charts of what hour is conducive to what, but I think we have instincts about it. If I am inviting calm into my life, what day of the week is conducive to that? And what time of the day or night? And if I say Tuesday at 10:30 in the morning, you're probably going to say, oh, no, not that. So the next question for you in this ritual that you might want to do is like, what time of day feels right? What day of the week feels right? Or what is it that I would be looking for in a time of day, in a day of the week? There are some traditions about doing this kind of work. For instance, traditions that especially propitious times for doing kind of magical work are at the new moon or at the full moon. New moon, I guess, suggesting rebirth. Full moon, through manifestation. There's another custom that it's very powerful to do magic during or just after Havdalah, at the end of Shabbat. It's best to do this before sunrise. So here we are in the dark of night. The dark of night might be very conducive.
Makes me think of the Kabbalists waking up at midnight to daven, and also tonight Tikkun Leyl Shavuot as staying up all night, and what happens in those times when we are in the waking dream time together.
Right. Beautiful. So what happens in this time? We're still in the dream time. So the less linear can become available to us. The invisible. That when the sun comes up and sheds light, what flees? That's available to us in the thick of the night. So we've talked a little bit about personal preparation. We've talked about this awareness of time and place, which we've talked about the use of angelic invitations, invocations, adjurations. So I want to come back and just now have just a little bit of discussion. I know this was a lot of downloading information. The question is sort of what, none of us is an adept at Jewish traditional magic. I mean, I'm not. And my question is not how do I recreate the magic that they did? My question is, what value is there for me in this world in which I live, in this life in which I inhabit? What value is there for me in bringing some of these principles into my decision making, into my family building, into my activism? And what might that look like?
I have a comment, which is,
Please.
and also a question. I think the value, when I first started studying Jewish mysticism, or I wanted to study Jewish mysticism, I was 23. And I knew that I wasn't supposed to study it because I wasn't a 40-year-old man. And so I stopped looking because I really respected the system that engendered whatever there was through that system. When we look back into ancient practices, we are acknowledging that whether or not we're conscious of the streams of awareness that come into us, those, and Shoshana, I have to thank you for this. I got this from your book. Those streams of awareness are there. And we may reawaken an ancient knowing that we simply didn't have the language for before. But I have a question. You were saying before that we can create the angels, maybe not the air quotes, we can create the angels by making up forgiveness of God. Put that together. Are you saying that, in fact, we have the power to create angels?
Well, we actually, there is Jewish mystical tradition that we in fact do that. That we each have divine light in us. Rabbi Pinchas of Koretz gives a teaching that when two people meet, their divine light touches and flames up and creates an angel, and that's the angel of their friendship. Right? There's that. There's also Hasidic. There are Hasidic teachings about when you do a mitzvah, it creates an angel. So if you now the question I'm hearing in it is this metaphorical or is this metaphysical? And I don't know. I want it to be metaphysical, but it also works metaphorically. It if I do a mitzvah, if I do something good, it might inspire the next person to do something good. So is that the angel that I created going on and continuing that mission? it works. It can work either way, depending on how you see it, how you see the mission of the angel that you create. We
Right.
know that, if I'm having a crappy day and I walk into the store and I'm nasty to the clerk, someone else is going to pay for that.
Mhm.
We see that clearly, that we know that. We see it a little less clearly with the coming in with generosity and compassion, in part because friendliness, in part because like American culture doesn't so much honor that, the coming in with friendliness and compassion. But presuming that does carry on in that person's day, and that person spreads it to someone else, is that an angel touching person after person, an angel I created?
Hmm.
Or is it something angelic that is just in our natures as humans that we catch off of each other? I don't know. And again, Judaism, I think, really does play cat and mouse with the literality of angels. I'm going to try to just hit a couple of these things quickly that are in the chat. Shoshana was looking at the image of the zodiac image. That's a mosaic from the floor of the Beit Alpha synagogue in the north, in the north of Israel. Famous mosaic. In the list of angel names, what does Aniel mean? That would be, I think it's Aniel with an ayin. So it could be God's responsiveness, or it could be God's humility. And it's hard to make what is God's humility? Well, if we go with the Gershon Winkler way of articulating it, it's like humility power. Like there's power in the pulling back, in the restraint. Reuben also mentions the Talmudic tenet that every blade of grass has an angel standing there, hitting it with a stick, telling it to grow. In Talmud, it's a mazal. It's not just any angel. It's specifically one of the, it's the zodiac, the stars in the heavens kinds of angels doing that. So yeah, so it's 11:50. This is the last teaching of the night. So maybe we can take a couple more minutes, and maybe people have a thought about what role can any of this kind of thinking bring to you, to your life. Dorothy? You're still muted, Dorothy.
A willingness to be empowered. And I'm a little afraid of it, frankly, because God creates angels, and what am I doing messing around with it? But looking at it from your point of view that you've been presenting, it sounds like it's an acceptance of our ability to bring power to ourselves, or bring abilities to ourselves, or change our environment, and open it.
Stepping into your power.
That's good too. Yeah.
In a certain way, which the one, I think the key element that we didn't discuss in these incantations is the use of divine names. And I think there's something, what you're naming is a little bit connected to the articulation of divine names. It's about being willing to be in contact with power, to be able to feel like I have authority over this change that I want. I don't know if that resonates for you.
Yeah. Maybe you have to have a certain humility to be able to connect to power.
Ilan in the chat says, sourcing power from the more than human world, decentralizing strength and knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Empowering, says Joanne. Sabra?
I have so many questions. Do we have to get off at midnight exactly?
And yeah.
Okay. Is there going to be a way to follow up to pick your brain? Because I'm loving this. I don't want it to end. I have so many questions.
You know how to reach me.
We're all so tired. Yeah.
And we could, we could put this on the agenda to do more of this kind of talking. One of the things I've been thinking about. Oh, did you want to ask one now? Ask something now, or say something now?
Do we have? I'm trying to draw a parallel to all the other shamanistic rituals that are sort of pan-human, and what they all have in common are one, that they have a way to get in, but they also have a way to get back out for the safety of being able to come back to here and now. So if you could touch on that. The other thing is a common thread that seems to go all across human cultures in their whatever shamanism they do, is that there are 3 worlds, one above, one below, and one in the middle. They think of Jack and the Beanstalk or Alice in Wonderland, or the Tolkien series. So that we have the Pardes. Do we have in Judaism something that's authentically Jewish? Do we have some sort of a lower world and a middle world? And the last thing was the mazal, the zodiac, that seems to be something that we sort of adopted from the Greeks, maybe, or something. And then I'm wondering how that isn't sort of rejected, but it's actually incorporated into our angels. It's like that's a very interesting thing to me. There's more than one synagogue floor with zodiacs on them, which seems so taboo.
The zodiac remains powerful through through the Middle Ages. There's a beautiful kina, a lament, a poem of lament for Tisha B'Av that goes through all of the signs of the zodiac and their reaction to the destruction of the temple. So it's present not just in sort of magical texts, but overall in Jewish mystical. Yes, let's do that this year. So yeah, these images are there. One of the things I think about is in activism. When you creating, for instance, creating an action, creating a demonstration or a protest is like creating ritual. And I think all of these things are relevant. All of these questions are relevant. Like, how am I going to prepare? How will we prepare? What exactly are we invoking? Because if, an angry protest for peace, is there's a question, like, what am I actually inviting in with my fist shaking? And I don't have I'm not giving an opinion that, like, we can never have angry protest, but be aware of what it is that you're inviting in and how you're using it, how you're deploying it.
Creating.
Yeah, and it might be there is time for anger and outrage, but it might be that what you're protesting for at that moment is not peace. It might be something else, and you had asked about the coming back from the ritual. Yes, so we talked about the preparation, but what do you do after something like this? If you have this kind of experience, you might need to immerse again. You might need to eat. Eating is a really powerful way of rerouting, regrounding in this physical earth. One of my teachers used to say, it should be red meat. And if you're a vegetarian, root vegetables, right? Because the symbolism of what we're eating is also powerful. Sex is grounding. It brings you back into your body. And so there are different strategies for coming back from these kinds of experiences. But you're right, there is something about setting this apart so that it's not mixed up with the other things going on in your life. That you create space for this, and then you close the space. It's 11:57. We really should stop. Ruben is saying something else about this, what this says about the integration of us with using our talents and abilities is expressing the energy of the universe, which he believes to be love. And that seems to be magic. So, meditation at midnight, we do need to move on. There's a meditation at midnight that Shoshana and I will be leading. Rabbi George was exhausted from having the memorial for his mother-in-law today, a big emotional hit. So we'll close now and join up in the other room, and Shoshana and I will lead you through a contemplative, meditative close to our evening tonight. So just go back to the first room that you started in tonight, the sanctuary room.
Can someone post the link in the chat?
I can. So unless
And
someone
can
else
we have
can do it
a
faster.
little bit of transition time, like 2 or 3 minutes to transition?
Yes, absolutely. Let me find the link.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was,
Erwin, I just posted it.
You did? Okay.
thank you.
Come on over. When you get there, tell Barbara we just need a couple minutes to breathe.
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi. I hope we'll have more of this. Like Sabra was saying, this is so delicious and wonderful.
Yes, I vote for this too. More, more, more.
Okay. Maybe we'll find a text and study it together and see what it says to us. Okay. Good night. See you in the other room.